John Machota, what are you hearing? What's going on? We know the elephant in the room. Mike McCarthy is no longer the coach. What's going on in Cowboys world right now?
Nothing definitive. I mean, obviously, the big story outside of Mike McCarthy is that Jerry talked recently to Deion Sanders, and so that's the biggest name you could possibly talk to in any coaching search. And so, I don't know. We'll get into that. I don't know how serious that really is. That in the early stages, for that to be the first person you reach out to, certainly seems like a lot of let's kind of stir some stuff up and get people talking about the Cowboys. That's the absolute name you would go to do something like that. Um, it's just one of those things where I think a lot of other teams, even if they had interest in Deion, they would have taken last weekend and met with some of these top coordinators with other teams, like a lot of other teams with coaching vacancies did. But for Deion to be the first one, it lines up perfectly with the way Jerry Jones, does business, and so it makes a lot of people think that he's the front runner. I've seen Vegas odds say that. I don't think that's the case at all. But again, we'll get into that. The other one is that came out today that reportedly Robert Saleh is going to interview with them. No date has been set or anything like that, but the former Jets head coach, former 49ers defensive coordinator, obviously would be a defensive coach. So if that was going to be somebody in the mix, a big part of whatever he was selling would have to be what he's going to do on offense. Like, who's going to be calling the offense? How is this going to help Dak Prescott? Because I don't think anybody has any questions about Robert Saleh on defense. Your defense, Robert Saleh, no question about that. But you got a lot of money invested in your offense. So how would that factor in there? But when you ask me that, the first thing I think of is really the other teams that have openings and how there are leaders in the clubhouse. Like, it was not a surprise to see Mike Vrabel go to the Patriots. It would not be a surprise to see Ben Johnson go to the Bears or Aaron Glenn go to the Saints. And there's just been a lot of names with some of these other openings, but there really isn't an obvious one for the Cowboys. And I believe if there was an obvious one all along, then they would have parted ways with Mike days after the final loss against Washington and the season ended. They wouldn't draw it out like this. And so now here we are. And I do think this coaching search will be longer than the last one. Last one, it was just, we're going to interview Mike McCarthy, we're going to interview Marvin Lewis, and that's it. I think this one's going to be similar to the year when they got Wade Phillips, when it was, I believe they talked to 10 candidates. That's the way that this thing sounds like it's going. And if that is the case, then you're not going to have any resolution for maybe a couple weeks.
John and panel, how we got here was complete disarray. Last show we started with, we've been back, forth. So what I want to do for a second, because we haven't talked in a week, I'm going to toss it to you, Law. How do you feel about how this Mike McCarthy situation was handled, from blocking his job to we all thought, oh, I know I did. I thought he'd be back. I thought they'd try to work something out. To now he's out, which was a complete shock to me. I was shocked, John Machota, shocked that he was not the coach.
Well, it looks like that they still had the rights to communicate with him, and it shows that Jerry Jones ultimately wanted him, but Mike McCarthy didn't want Jerry based off of the pricing of the contract or the length of years, whatever it may be. So they had to part ways mutually. So I looked at it like that. Of course, there was some rumblings and news that Jerry already talked to Deion Sanders throughout the week, but I take that as tongue in cheek. I look at it like, Mike McCarthy, if you look at his total body of work and his resume completely, you will have to say that it is up there with Sean Payton. It is up there with Mike Tomlin. So out of being respected by his agent probably banged the table and said rightfully he should get these type of money that those two guys are getting. So, of course, I think that this is a good situation for us completely because it's mutually. Mike McCarthy still have time to go out there to interview and get things going from there. And if he's worth a grain of salt, like everybody said, then he will have a job either with the Jets or Chicago or, dare I say, the New Orleans Saints. So, yeah.
AOC, how you feeling about how this timeline went down? Was it Bush League to you? Will this scare off other coaches? Just how you feeling about the timeline?
Well, what we have to do is we got to make sure that we keep things fair, regardless of how we feel about Jerry, regardless of how we feel about how the Cowboys have been handling things. We cannot get up here and leave out parts of the facts. We can't leave out the facts, right? And the facts are Jerry blocked his interview with Chicago because he fully intended on bringing Mike McCarthy back.
Facts.
problem was,
That's real. That's
like
a great
I said in last week's show, it was no longer in Jerry Jones. Didn't I say this last week, y'all? Chat, do y'all not remember me saying this could happen last week? Didn't I say this could be drawn out to the point to what happens if Mike is like, hey, I don't want to do it? And based off of just some of the reports floating around, something else I was right about. I did a video November 16th, 2024, and I laid out exactly why and how Jerry Jones was going to get Jason Witten into this organization and line him up as a head coach of the future. And according to reports of James Slater, parts of the reason Mike McCarthy never even got to the negotiating phase of doing a contract. See, Law, they never talked about money. They never talked about years. He got up from the table as soon as Jerry started trying to, according to reports, as soon as Jerry started trying to impose certain requirements on Mike McCarthy, such as, I don't know, maybe creating another Wade Phillips, Jason Garrett situation where Jerry wants his incumbent head coach, his future head coach, training under someone, right? With Jason Witten, his name was brought into that. We discussed all of this, so I don't have as much of an issue with how he's handled it so far because, quite frankly, Jerry just lost. He lost this round. He wanted Mike McCarthy, he blocked Mike McCarthy, and he lost because Mike McCarthy realized, hey, I have free will. I don't have to take this. I'm going to leave. I'm going to get the Chicago Bears to fly me in on a private jet.
Come on. Yeah.
Hey, now I want to put a pin in that. John, is there any validity to, because I think AOC is spot on, but some of these reports, I got to say, and this is why I love having an insider on this panel, I got to say some of it is Bush League. Like, I don't know, I'm not going to put a name on it, but when I start hearing things like Dak and Mike hated each other, and there was at one point, I'm just like, well, hold on, time out. There is a difference between like coaching somebody hard and hatred and you just absolutely can't stand a guy, or and maybe they're not on the same page schematically. Okay, that's one thing. But they didn't like each other at one point. I don't know about that because every player on this team has talked high about McCarthy. There's literally not one guy who said anything bad about McCarthy. Number two, is there any validity? Because I'm gonna be honest, the Jason Witten thing sounded like a joke. It sounded like clickbait. AOC's been spot on. Is that real, John? Is that real?
So there's a lot to unpack there from everything that you guys said because I have a lot of thoughts on all of it. So let me just start with the Jason Witten thing. I don't see Jason Witten as their next head coach. I do see Jason Witten being on that staff. And if you're
something,
I can see why you wouldn't want Jason Witten on your staff because you're going to be the guy just preparing him to take the next job. And there might be a coach out there. Who's to say that if there's no interest in, let's say, like a Pete Carroll,
Robert Saleh
deal where he does the contract where he's the head coach for 2 years, and then Jason Witten is the head coach in waiting. We've seen that in college. That's not really a pro thing, but with the Cowboys, you can never count that out. And so that's my thoughts on that. It would not surprise me to see Jason Witten on this next staff, but I don't think he will be the head coach. As far as the Dak Mike thing, I don't think Dak and Mike were as tight as maybe Dak and Kellen Moore or even Dak and Jason Garrett were when Mike first was the head coach. As the years went on, like at the end here, I don't see that at all where there was some disagreement or that Dak wanted to move on or anything. Like I never saw that. And this is the season.
I'm glad you touched on
that. So
yeah.
It is what it is. You can't control that. I mean, that's the toughest part of covering the Cowboys is that there's just always going to be stuff out there and you just do your best to report what you can. But no, I had never seen anything, I'd never heard anything back channel, none of that about them disliking each other. Yeah. But one thing I do want to go back to on the Mike McCarthy thing. So I get what you guys are saying about that Jerry messed this up and all that, but I have to ask you guys, are we sitting here today with Mike McCarthy getting a new 5-year deal?
Come on, John.
That?
Come on, John. Come on, John.
Say that again.
Come on, John.
If we were sitting here today and Jerry and Mike had agreed, we're going to run it back, and Mike gets a new 5-year deal, you guys would have been fine with that?
No.
My head's exploding.
No. It had to be some type of concessions or something dealing with, hey, we'll bring you back, but these will be the stipulations. Maybe another offensive coordinator. Maybe you step away from play calling, or maybe they put into somewhere as you get these type of things. And I don't know whether or not the incentives would be open to the public, but I think that would be one of the qualifiers there too. Like, if you get us here, you will have this incentive. If you get us there, you will have that incentive. But outside of that, I don't think 4 to 5 more years of Mike McCarthy would have been able to suffice for the things that we're looking for, especially out for this franchise. But to Jerry Jones' mindset, if he says that, and he said, well, I want to marry Mike McCarthy's contract with Dak Prescott, I think that could have been the only way that you would bring back Mike McCarthy.
So,
to answer your question real quick, hell no, I don't want Mike McCarthy back on no 4 or 5 year deal. Hell no, I'm glad. Good riddance, Mike. Bye-bye, man. Don't let the door hit you with a good Lord split you, bro. Get up out of here. Goodbye.
And I don't get this. I don't get the sense that Jerry wanted him back on that long-term deal either. It would have been maybe it's a 2-year deal, and in those next 2 seasons, they make this NFC Championship game run, they make a Super Bowl run, then you go back to the bargaining table, and hey, you've taken this franchise somewhere it hasn't been in 30 years.
Right.
We'll reward you for it. That's different. But the idea that you would give Mike a new 5-year deal. I mean, here's my thing. Like, I think Mike's a good coach. I think he's going to get a head coaching job somewhere else. But there is a little bit of that, kind of what you're seeing in Pittsburgh a little bit, where I like Mike Tomlin a lot, but there is something about, like, when something stays the same,
it gets stale.
It gets stale. It might be fine somewhere else.
Yep.
It might be great for Caleb Williams, and it might be a great stabilizing force for the Bears or something like that. But with where things were going, particularly on offense, it's hard for me to think that Jerry Jones was going to buy in for 5 more years.
Well, and if you're a Bears fan, I mean, you pay for a 9-7 season, a 10 and whatever season, 12-5, whatever. But I agree there. I think,
the thing though, real quick on that, Foots, if you're the Bears though, the dilemma you have is, do you want the stabilizing factor, or are you so caught up with what's going on right now and what just happened in Washington, where you feel like, if I bring in the right guy, like a Ben Johnson or something like that can spark Caleb, why couldn't we have that season right away? Now, obviously, Ben Johnson doesn't have previous head coaching experience like Dan Quinn does, but I could see for the fan base, my only issue with that is that I just think that they're in a spot, kind of like Washington was, though, where they need to stabilize things. That's why I think Mike would make some sense there.
I'm going to tell you, being in this area close, I'm glad that we brought up Dan Quinn and we can get this out of the way, because a lot of people have inquired, why didn't you keep Dan Quinn? What do you think about Dan Quinn? So, yeah, I'll say this. These are my high-level thoughts, and you guys can fight me on it. Dan Quinn is the ultimate shot-in-the-arm guy. He's the ultimate, like, if you want a drink of Celsius water, I know that's the new hot energy drink, that's what Dan Quinn is. However, I want to see.
Crash.
Yeah, exactly. I think I lean toward more what John is saying of maybe getting a young guy who has staying power, because the problem with a guy like Dan Quinn, and we saw it in Dallas, you move on from Mike Nolan to Dan Quinn, this defense,
oh my God, Law, man, oh my God, bro. My man Borna came in here with the Sanders foolishness, man. Oh my God! Hold on. He donated, Foots. It's a super chat question.
It's the first super chat of the channel. Yeah. We got to honor that.
Hold on. Let me see what I do. I'm trying to tell you. Well, hold on. I try my hardest to not look at the chat, because you'll lose focus. What I'm saying about Quinn is high level. Quinn is a shot in the arm guy, but we saw this defense after a while. You talk about stale, you talk about the same looks, you talk about the hoorah goes away, and then it's X's and O's. And I agree. Right now, Jaden Daniels is having that Dak Prescott type year. I want to see when they play a harder schedule. I want to see when Tyler Biadasz is figured out and other players.
Let's go Washington. My bad. That was my Tourette's was acting up. My bad.
I just want to end there real quick. If this is Dan Quinn, and he's available right now, it makes total sense.
Right.
But I'm not going to act like I can't remember. It's almost a year ago to the day. You had to do that right after the Packers loss? You want to talk about however you feel about Jerry Jones right now, and believe me.
I'm about to say, why we talk about DQ, man?
No, I'm just saying,
if you would have hired Dan Quinn as the head coach after that Packers loss, people would have been irate.
Yeah, but I think that no one was fired after the Packers lost, right? No one, not a single soul. Everyone was eligible to either walk off with their own power.
Well, you
I
would have
think,
to move on from Mike. And
Yeah. So I get it. I get what you're saying. And the difference is between Dak's rookie year and Jaden Daniels is, and I know attack, before I say this, I got to say this. The difference is between the two is that the Washington is finna go into an 89 million available in cap space, and they got a front office that's going to make some moves and step back and allow Quinn to pick out what he want to pick out, and Jaden Daniel will have more and more opportunities to have more and more weapons. They're going to add to instead of take away because the Cowboys was taking away everything from our quarterback.
Hey, man, we got all this Cowboys news. Screw the Commanders, man. We got all this Cowboys news, man.
Go ahead.
We got Dion. We got Saleh.
Hold on, AOC. Let's keep it on the rails for this.
Temper.
Yeah. Let's keep it on the rails.
Whoa.
The reason
being
why,
on the rails is talking Cowboys. For damn.
but it's context. It's context that matters. But go ahead, Foots.
The reason why it's context because there's people who will, like you said, make these apples to apples comparisons. Where again. Another thing that I'll say is this: have we thought about what happens if this doesn't work? Like, or if you move on from Mike and it's like, oh, this is a 3-win season. But I digress. No more Dan Quinn talk. Okay, here's what Dan Quinn is relevant because
he's not, man. We got all this stuff going on, man. No, he's not. No, he's not.
Let AOC, you run the show.
No, he's not. All right, cool. So, all right, so back to Minnesota. John, do you think that the Robert Saleh thing is more just trying to satisfy the Rooney Rule?
I mean, it's probably, that could be part of it, but I would say that there also is, what if Robert Saleh doesn't get a head coaching job? And they could be interested certainly in him as a head coach. I don't think that you should just judge him on what happened with the New York Jets. That's not a great situation he got.
Right.
But
I'm not judging him at all. I think Robert Saleh would be an amazing DC right now, man.
Yeah, because I remember in 2021 when that was going on. I mean, he was the Ben Johnson, Aaron at the time. So I do think that he would be great for the defense. So there's a part of me that wonders, bring him in. He could blow you away to where you're just like, this was such a great interview. This is the exact type of, we need this type of leader, fiery guy that's leading the team. But if you didn't really like it and it was just an okay interview, you got in your back pocket as, if he doesn't get a head coaching job, this is the guy we really like as a DC. We did like how he brought these things up during his interview. You get a chance to pick his brain on things. So I don't think it's just, let's just go through the process just to do this. I do think that there is interest in Robert Saleh.
Okay. No doubt. And when you look at his total body of work, you don't want him to go back to the 49ers, not to make this 49ers show attack on Cowboys. But I would say this, though.
We got exactly an hour today. We can't be spending 10, 15 minutes on that Quinn, bro. That's all I'm saying, bro.
But Robert as a head coach, I get it. He wasn't the offensive coordinator there or called the offense, but they were 20-36. So that's something that you have to bring along with the resume of him interviewing as the head coach here. I don't think that would move the needle far as the belief factor here. How do you three guys feel about Robert Saleh being the ultimate head coach here?
Nah, I'm not rolling. I'm not rolling. Only because I just feel like Robert Saleh to me strikes me as a guy that's okay with dealing with tyranny. Like he came from the Jets, right? And the Jets has one of the more difficult ownership groups with the Woody Johnson and those guys. And he had his grandkids in there helping drafts and helping with trades and stuff. So to me, Robert Saleh would be another layover and let Jerry do Jerry guy. You know what I'm saying? I don't think he. But who?
Who isn't going to be that?
I mean, I'm about to say there's a few people I feel like would kind of stick to their own guns.
Tell me who.
Ben Johnson. Hey, man, you gonna have to fucking relax, Foots. You gonna have to relax, man. You gonna have to relax. Get that energy together.
No. I'm just telling you what I'm telling you.
No, man, because you
listen. There's not a chance. There's not a chance. Listen to me. You listen for 1 second.
Relax, man.
Listen, Linda. Listen.
Relax.
You gotta listen.
You damn relax. You go over there looking sour face and start rushing me to my answer.
No. Listen. You gotta listen. There's not a chance that Deion Sanders would come in here. We can get right to Prime. There's not a chance that Deion Sanders would come in here and be able to run the show. He would be the face. he's not going to push back.
Man,
And
Jason Garrett already said what it is, though. Jason Garrett, he just came on an interview probably a day ago. Law, I'm pretty sure you probably gonna pick this up real soon. Jason Garrett laid out exactly what it is to be the Cowboys coach, what's expected, what you have to deal with, the positives and the negatives. He talked about this 2 days ago. He said the main thing with dealing with Jerry is you got to make sure you have a plan of action, and you have to know exactly how you want to execute it, and you have to be clear and concise in what you need from him. And the benefit of working with Jerry is you're only working with Jerry. We all get caught up talking about the owners and, oh, Jerry's the only owner in the league that does X, Y, and Z. But then we don't realize that these coaches actually have to deal with GMs. We don't talk about the GMs and how difficult they may be to work with or anything. So there are certain aspects to it that Jason Garrett laid out. I'm sorry. I don't believe that Jerry Jones is as much of a cumbrance on these coaches as we're trying to paint it out to be. I do believe he does encumber them, but I don't think it's to the degree we're making it. I'm just saying.
So, all right, this is where I disagree wholeheartedly, because to be honest with you, Saleh is, if you want a guy to me who would, it's not about, I think everybody's like, oh, who would stand up to Jerry? We already tried that with Bill Parcells. You know what he did? He walked off the job. I'm done. I'm cool. I can't do this. So you're not going to get that headstrong, come in, change the whole vibe. Like, you're not going to get that. There's not one coach who's coming in here under Jerry Jones' tutelage and saying, hey, man, we got to change this. They're going to look, and John, you can speak to this. They're going to look at that coach and say, no. In Dallas, this is how things work. Why not take a guy like Robert Saleh, who, if nothing else, can stabilize one side of the ball? We keep looking for these offensive gurus. We keep saying, hey, we want somebody who can come in here and change the offense. I'm telling you now, those walk-around OC play callers, if they don't have another guy on the defensive side of the ball to hold things down, it could go haywire. You look at Mike McDaniel, haywire. You look at some of these other places, haywire. Guess what? Andy Reid, we love him. He couldn't win the big game in Philly. He goes to KC, and he gets a real DC. Now it looks different with Steve Spagnuolo. So to me, I'm telling you right now, Ben Johnson is not taking this job. I can just tell you right now. To me, the guys that are in play, maybe Prime, but I got some really strong intel that Prime's not even in play. Prime is, and I know some kids who are at Colorado who Prime has came in and said he's not leaving. So that's out. To me, it's somebody like Aaron Glenn, who has high energy, or Robert Saleh, who is a great, great motivator and teacher and defensive mind, and then he brings in the OC. That's my thoughts, high level.
Well, first of all,
very relaxed.
AOC sounds like he wants to bring back Jason Garrett.
What more do you want? Hey man, don't get my messaging confused. Hey, don't get my messaging confused. That's not what I said at all.
That's your message.
That's not what I said at all. I simply laid out because we keep talking about what coach can operate under what and all that stuff. I simply laid out what Jason Garrett is, someone who had the job before, man, laid out as what the expectations actually are and what it's like to work in that temperature. That's all I laid out.
Yeah.
I
was just messing with you.
Yeah.
I watched that interview this morning. It was pretty good. Just because Jason wouldn't talk like that when he was the head coach. So
exactly.
Position now where he can say things that he wouldn't have said at the time. But I will say he's still very close with Jerry, very complimentary of Jerry. I wouldn't expect him to be otherwise. But yeah, no, he did make some really interesting points about the job. Deion is the one name I would say that's why you would bring him in. But that's the problem, is that Jerry doesn't want to have that. So he likes everyone talking about it. But the problem is that when Jerry's in that dark room by himself and has to make the final decision, I don't see him going like, yeah, I want to deal with everything that's going to come with Deion. Like one of the big things that people have talked about in the last couple of days is just how big of a staff Deion has at Colorado, which is funny to me because the Cowboys are known for not doing that.
Right.
Would Deion have the autonomy to really be Deion? And if he's not going to do that, why would he want the job? And so he's the one person that would give you that chance, probably since Parcells, because there's nobody else in this that I really can't see Ben Johnson doing that. If he agrees to be the Cowboys head coach.
Aaron Glenn.
What's that?
Aaron Glenn. I like what Rich said. I think
Aaron
Glenn. He's an
if
old Cowboy.
Jason Witten had more skins on the wall in terms of coaching, I think there is a day down the line where, because Jerry respects him so much from his days as a player, maybe he could push back on some of that stuff. But even then, I don't know if he would, because again, he's close with the family. I don't think he would, be taking shots at Jerry on the podium like you can't rule out Deion doing. And a lot of fans would love that, and it's wild I just don't know that gets you closer to winning a Super Bowl. And where I think Deion would make a lot of sense is if the Cowboys were coming off that, early 2000s, 5-win seasons 3 years in a row, and you're kind of doing a rebuild. You don't really have your quarterback. When you give $60 million to Dak Prescott and you give 34 to CD and you're going to give whatever 35, 40, whatever to Micah, like you're not in a rebuild. So you need somebody that you think can come in right away. And Foots, to your point, that's why I've never been big on the Lincoln Riley thing from what you were saying is that,
Same.
And really even Kingsbury too, where you just,
Same.
there really isn't that. And I shouldn't say this because I was just sitting in the stands. I don't really know what's going on, but man, last year when the Cowboys played the Cardinals, the night before I went to the USC game because I was like, oh, this would be cool. I get to see Caleb Williams, whatever. And tickets were not very expensive at all. And I'm behind their bench, man. And I never seen Lincoln Riley. It was almost like it was a cool kids group of Lincoln Riley, Cliff Kingsbury, Caleb Williams. It was like, we're going to run this thing. And this is a joke, what I'm about to say. There's no truth to this, but it really made you think. I'm like, does he know the guys on the defense? Like, does he talk? You know what I'm saying? So I bring that up to say that you can't say that about Kyle Shanahan. You can't say that about Sean McVay. Now, they're offensive minds, but their defenses have been a big part of what's allowed them to win Super Bowl. So to your point, Foots, you got to find somebody that can do both. So when I say Robert Saleh, a big part of that would be, okay, who's going to be your offensive coordinator?
Right.
What's the plan there?
Yeah, I think.
I think you can find a good DC anyway. I think you can find a good defensive coach, man. I mean, the same way you laid out that, when you have an offensive mind, the defense is always lacking. I mean, you can look at guys like a Wade Phillips. You can look at Robert Saleh with the Jets. His offense was always lacking. Like, so it works both ways, man. Regardless, whoever the head coach is, they have to have a competent staff. Like, regardless, bro. Whatever, I don't care what side of the ball they specialize on.
Yeah. It's so for me, I look at trees, right? I'm looking at coaching trees. Now, I want to circle back to the Deion thing. The other thing about it is Deion is the one player coach who would possibly be bigger than Jerry. So there's a difference between him taking orders from Jerry and then it's like, wait a minute, Jerry, and I'm bigger than you. I have my own show. I have my own camera crew. I have people that follow me. Like Deion has his episode season 2 of Prime on Amazon. Like he could possibly go down as being bigger than Jerry in that way because he went to Colorado. He turned him around. Like this was a 1-11 team, 1-11 the year before he got there.
How do you guys think that the players would be with that?
I think that players would run through a wall for Prime because it's different when you were that good. And I'm not lobbying for Deion to be our coach at all. But when you are that good, John, and you can coach and you know a little bit about X's and O's. Now, Prime is another name who could get high name OC and a DCN, I believe.
Right.
Because Prime is a people's person. The only thing that I would fear when it comes to Deion Sanders is what you said, John. Going to the podium and Deion just saying one day, I don't want to talk to you today, John. I don't like what you wrote about me. Because he's done that at Colorado. Hold on, time out. He's done that at Colorado where it's just like, I don't think, and that's where I think Jerry was stepping like, hey, wait a minute. We don't do that here. And that would be the issue. But other than that, I mean, bro, I do believe that players will play hard for Deion Sanders. That's a fact. Because when you are that good and you know what you're talking about, some players that come back and coach like, I don't really know. He can capture a room. That's what Prime can do. So that's where I see. But see, when we just throw off, like, I'm gonna tell you, the reason why I'm scared of the hot shot OC is exactly what you just said, John. Would they have the capacity like a Kellen Moore? Kellen Moore would not be able to capture a room. You just said it. We just answered this question, John. Kellen and Dak were really cool. That's a problem. Because to me, when you're buddies like that, is everybody being coached hard? Is there a standard? All these culture things that we want, Kellen, they will look at Kellen. Nah. No,
it's hard to have peer-to-peer coaching. Yeah, especially from the aspect of Kellen Moore to Dak, and that would be more the same. So if you want to go against the grain a little bit, bring in somebody from the outside that haven't been here. I looked at Joe Brady and what he was able to do. He's coaching up Josh Allen on the offensive side, right? 28 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. He got those turnovers down as far as passing or what have you, and then he got 12 on the ground. So they implemented something new, the tush push over there in Bills land. So it got Josh Allen looking good. I'm quite sure Joe Brady come here, he will have Dak Prescott looking good, or dare I say Ashton Genty if you draft him in the first round. So there's so many things that we can look at, but we're behind the eight ball. I think that we need to get this coaching staff together because we got over 20 free agent players that we have to evaluate. We have staff members that we have to evaluate and bring in. This is geared up for a long offseason, John. You're going to be doing a lot of writing and a lot of research on relationships that coaches had before and after. And if you guys looked at anything, the tractions this offseason is at its all-time high opposed to what we did last year when we didn't fire anyone. So as a content creator, hey, keep this going. But Jerry, got to hurry up and sign somebody so we can get ready to compete.